Marcy? Is that working? Is it working? Okay, great. Good news, today's presentation is going to be short because we have the expo. It's also going to be informative and interactive with Vice President of Facilities at Mission Federal Credit Union, Lisa Chappell. She's going to be asking you guys some questions as well. So before we move in to the presentation, is it working? If not, I can move you up there. Is it working? Yeah. Okay. All right. I talk loud anyway, so if I'm talking too loud, let me know. Before we move into the presentation, let's take a step back and really understand the definition of the word trend. A lot of us get this word confused with fad. Fad is something that's cool, stylish, very short term, and there's not a lot of research and data behind it. A trend, on the other hand, is very long term, and it's a general movement or direction that's taking place, whether we like it or not. And what we're going to look at today is the research and data behind trends that are affecting our facilities. So let me get the clicker. Oh, you have it. All right, we got it. So let's all take our right hand, put it on your shoulder, give yourself a little pat, because all of you are dealing with the fastest rate of change in history within our industry. And a lot of these categories, the forces of change, is what's called STEEP, and that's social, which we're going to talk a little bit about generations in the workplace, technology, economic, environment, and political. Guys, no way, no how, not going to touch political today. So we're just going to talk social, technology, environmental, and economical. We're all in facilities, so we're going to have some action items. We hopefully will understand the framework, the trending framework, the changing role. We'll be able to also learn about the different forces, and most importantly, we hope to leave here to be able to apply some of these trends in the way that we create meaningful spaces. Social engagement. Here are some fun facts, and again, this is facts that have been created that are affecting our facilities. Marrying. For the first time in history, we are spending the number of years unmarried versus married. Always in history, we've spent more of our life married. The next trend I find a little sad. So since 1985, the number of individuals who do not have a best friend have tripled. So people are actually looking at facilities and work more for social. And then aging in the workplace, which we all know about. Here's some stats though, is that the median age right now is about 37, 38. And by 2020, it's going to be closer to 42. The other trend that's taking place is that 32% of individuals between the ages of 64 and 75 by 2020 will be working full time. That's just because of health care, we're living longer, but it's also something that facilities is going to have to address. A new phase, life phases, I call a new phrase. We've all been so focused on the 4 different generations, but now what the trend that's taking place is life phases. So let's give an example on that. Let's say you have a 25-year-old married with a 2-year-old and 4-year-old. You've got a 45-year-old married with a 2-year-old and 4-year-old. They're going to have so much more in common than the 28-year-old that's single and the 48-year-old that's single and divorced with no children. So instead of really grouping this in generations, they're starting to look at where are you at in your life phases, because that's going to affect your lifestyle and your values. So for facilities, one of the challenges is that for organizations to attract talent, it's getting harder and harder today. And again, it has to do with where you're at in your life phase, your lifestyle, your values. In the past, it always had to do with compensation and salary, that you could attract that talent immediately with compensation. Not so much today. It's more of what can that place where I work provide. And that kind of leads us to our first question that Lisa's going to ask you guys.
All right, question number 1.
Do you want this?
How does your facility begin to engage potential talent for your company even before they're hired? So how does your facility begin to engage potential talent for your company even before they're hired? Lydia.
so that if a new hire is hired, then that person that referred them is actually given, monetary, like $1,000, for that new hire. So they put it out there to see, who are you associating with, who are the good, networking people or good people that would be a part of our company. And that's how I recruited Holly. So I didn't get a bonus, no.
Who else?
We have a lot of transparency for potential hires, so we actually give them an entire facility tour and show them, our labs, what people are actually working on, things like that. So they know the layout; they're already familiar with it, even before they start working if they're chosen for the position, and then that kind of gets them excited as much as possible if they're interested in the job.
So she said that even before they're hired, their company gives them a full tour of the facility to let them know kind of what they're in for. So, anybody else?
Internships.
Internships. Great. Oh, talk to us a little bit about that.
Bottom line, well, that's interns coming out of school find out what they like, what they don't like, and that's really key to how they move ahead.
Great way to get them exposed.
Great
to
way to
your
expose to
organization.
a lot of different things, a lot of different people, a lot of different work styles and workplaces.
I know at Mission Fed we do a lot of social media. We have a person whose full-time job is social media, and they're constantly sharing about our culture, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just to talk about what it's like to work for Mission Fed. And that's a pretty powerful way to communicate with particularly the younger generations about our company. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
All right, great. So yes, branding, referral, those are all hugely important. So that's something that our facilities are having to take a look at. Here's a statistic that I was surprised, maybe you guys aren't, but I was, that when the Gallup survey in 2016, they discovered that 70% of the workforce in the office facilities today is not engaged. So what that has created is the C-suite is now really looking at the statistic, and workspace for the first time is starting to be viewed as a ROI, a return on investment. Because if you can get those employees engaged in the facility, into the company, then you're going to increase productivity to affect that bottom line. So it's interesting. Yes?
What do they mean that they're not engaged?
They do different kinds of surveys as far as attention span, what they're focused on, the amount of work that they can get done, distraction. Do they have the tools that they need to create the product that they're doing or the task at hand? So all of those surveys come into play, and then the percentages came out that they weren't as engaged, they weren't having the tools that they needed to be engaged 100% of the time. You're never going to be engaged 100% of the time, but when you look at the population that's saying that they don't have the tools at hand to be engaged, which is 70%, then that's when they started looking at trends, because what's affecting that non-engagement?
And it's not just tools, it's attitude too.
Well, yeah.
Do you like your job? Do you like the people you work with? Do you like your supervisor? Gallup has a big poll that they do every year, and a lot of companies individually also do engagement surveys. I know Mission Fed does one, and it's very interesting to see the results and how that impacts your organization's productivity.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
That's a good point. How many of you have participated in an engagement survey? So that's where a lot of the results come from and the type of questions that they ask. And this percentage is raised. So what that has done is one of the best ways to engage is through communication, like what Lisa was saying, if you're happy with your job. And space absolutely communicates how it supports the work at hand. So we need to understand the trend that communication is changing. And we all know that there's a whole generation out there that's been looking down at their phones. This is it. So what we've been looking at, and what from interior designer standpoints, architects, facilities, is maybe we should raise the sight lines. Start at the floor, raise the sight line up to the ceiling, settle in the middle, and get that person engaged in the space. So those are just some of the trends that we're seeing before, because you have so many people that are communicating social media, just like what you were saying, to get people in. So how do we look at the changes in communication?
So Anne, how is that designed to do that? How do buildings or architects or designers make that happen?
Probably a good one is for like DPR. I don't know if you guys have been into DPR, but when you walk into their space, they have the surfboard up front. You automatically know their sort of lifestyle. You see wetsuits that are hanging out in the morning for those that have served. Everything in their conference room is named as a beach. So people automatically kind of go like, wow, this is kind of a lifestyle. This is kind of a value. I can see how they kind of balance work and play. So the type of signage or visuals that you have, and more people are putting signage on the floor. Like one of the ones that we saw back in the Midwest was Welcome Monday. So it's pretty funny because you walk in and you see Welcome Monday. It might be Tuesday, but it's like basically welcome to work. So you're definitely seeing branding, hashtags that are being incorporated from the brand from social media into the space. So much more on the floor than ever before, which is new, of course. Oh, and then the 24/7, we are definitely an era that's tethered 24/7 because of our laptops, because of our cell phones. And that formal schedule of 9 to 5 is gone. And so facilities now have to incorporate the spontaneity of work, how fast-tracked, and more importantly is you need to have those spaces where somebody has to squeeze in a doctor's appointment in between two meetings, internal meetings or conference room, because work and life now have completely blended like never before because the 9 to 5 schedule is gone. Some people think it's a good thing, some people think it's not such a great thing, but as we discussed at the beginning, it's a trend and it's here and it's going to stay, so how are we going to adopt to that change within our facilities? Yes?
Qualcomm built an actual clinic, a health clinic for their employees right on campus. So when they have to go to doctor's appointments, you know, they don't have to leave. It's right there on campus.
Yep.
That was pretty interesting and new.
Yep,
I've seen.
absolutely, and more people are looking for that and the type of job and why job seekers are getting choosier. Yes?
They also have mobile haircuts, so.
Which is a plus. Which is a plus. So traditional spaces, how many of you currently have what I call the diner, the booth installed in your space, in your facilities? Booth, like the restaurant style booth? A couple? So we're really seeing that across the generations, that those type of booths, you'll see them in lobby areas, just in the middle of a work area, possibly over in the cafeteria area, that this is a traditional space that innately people are comfortable with. They know how to use it. It's that quick impromptu meeting. You can get your work done. It's very casual. And the whole thing that one of our clients had said was you get her done. You get in the booth, you have your meeting, you get a quick bite to eat, and you're out. So these traditional spaces are things that we're starting to see in facilities that then your workers innately know how to use the space and how it supports them. And of course, we're designing for 4 generations. That's the first time in history as well. So zonal design is more important than it's ever been before. And a great example of zonal design is your home. You know the kitchen is for cooking. You know the bedrooms for sleeping. You know the living rooms for social and presentation or TV. And so in our spaces today in facilities, there's been a huge movement for collaboration and open space. But there also needs to be that balance of the quiet zone. What about that heads down, focused, individual work that needs to be done? And how do you balance that? So that's what we mean by zonal design, that instinctively the worker will know, wow, this is what this space is for and how it is supposed to support the task I need done today. This is over here, the loud zone, the collaboration. So we're starting to look at zonal design as we have in our home, again, blending that work and home life. We had Delos speak, and I don't know who all was at that luncheon in February about well-building standards and wellness. It's hugely important. And why? $1 trillion by now, 2017, $1 trillion is being spent on wellness. Huge trend. And you had mentioned, I think Lydia did, that with Qualcomm, with the clinics, that the millennials expect the facilities and their organization to support their physical, mental, and emotional needs. That's something that they look at because for the first time that they're looking at the office workers, there's 3 components: stress, lack of physical activity, and obesity that are causing all these health issues. And the fact and trend behind that is that 1 in every 2 consumers is either preventing or taking some type of medication for stress and anxiety. So it is real. So this one really surprised me, 1 and 2 in the workforce today through the different Gallup surveys. We've always talked about too with the well building, everybody knows nutrition, quality of air, but one of the most simplest ways is that, especially here in San Diego, is daylight views. They did a study with the Mayo Clinic that those individuals that had daylight views actually gained 46 minutes extra sleep a night. Think about that, that's like 20 hours a month. And there's nothing better than sleep to reduce anxiety and stress. So something just as simple as offering daylight views. Technology. Technology, huge adoption rate for us, super fast. And one of the ways that it's affecting facilities is that 25% of jobs right now are going to be replaced by 2019 with automation. And the biggest trend is reception and lobby areas. Lots of kiosks coming up with receptionists, a lot of where you ring the bell. So that's going to bring us to our second question that Lisa's going to ask in regards to facilities, because 2019 is only 2 years away.
And I won't ask you about how many of you are on anti-anxiety medication. Although I know it's every other one of you. Okay. How are you addressing changes within reception and lobby spaces in your facility? Do y'all still have traditional receptionists, or do you do something different? Jessica?
So for us, you walk into our office and there's a lobby space, and we have a huge bell, and you ring it.
Ring the bell.
And literally anyone in the pit will come and greet the person.
Okay.
Reception.
And that works pretty well?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
We have the voice of God.
The voice of God.
Our security has a camera in the lobby. They see you come in, and over the speakerphone says, "May I help you?" If they don't die from a heart attack, we're able to find out who they need to talk to.
Okay.
Seen a lot at the entry. See a lot more like open floor plans with glass windows. It's not so
Closed in.
Yeah, so closed in when you first approach the entryway.
So more transparency, so people see people coming in
glass
instead of
windows as opposed to
standing around in the lobby trying to figure out what to do.
So
Randy?
our company has just started providing the auto attendant where they have a iPad in front.
Right.
You check in, the person you're going to see, it prints out a name match, sends them an email. And
Awesome.
so it's definitely coming faster than you think.
How has that been received?
We literally just picked it up.
Okay.
So I presented to the first customer today, so I'll let my next one.
All right. Anybody else?
Working for a government contractor, our reception area won't ever go away.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, with security clearances and things like that, with multiple customers coming in, admirals, generals, people like that, it won't ever go away.
You know, Mission Fed's kind of in that same boat. We've had lots of discussions about that, but our culture really dictates that personal connection. However, our receptionist really doesn't do much for reception other than she just happens to sit there. Her job is very complex. She just happens to sit there and greet people. I saw a hand over here.
Our reception is actually our kitchen. So you walk in, it's this really nice, like almost like your living room.
Really?
And it's really well branded with our logo and stuff. And then after that, there's a receptionist there.
Very nice.
So you walk through and it's kind of like cantina sort of thing.
So you get a feel for your
It's like, yeah,
organization's
welcome to our
culture.
home kind of process.
Great. Anyone else?
I want to just say that I worked for a company that refused to go to the direct dial system. We had a receptionist answer the phone and put the call through to you. And but we all had to watch the phone, you know, like if it rang 3 times because the receptionist was away from the desk and we had to grab it. So you had all the professional staff stopping and looking at the phone to see if somebody was going to answer it. And I mean, we thought that was ridiculous because we're all used to using direct dial and our customers are used to leaving messages on a machine and that sort of thing. I bet the same thing's going to happen with lobbies. I think the culture might change gradually, but once it does, everybody's going to go, why did we take so long?
Why did we dedicate that FTE to staying on? But anyway, interesting. Anybody else want to weigh in?
like having a live person there. I kind of use that for interviewees for a job position. I ask our front desk ladies, how did that person treat you versus how they treated the VP who's about to interview them.
Right.
That to me is like a really great way to know that person, because they're going to change once they get into that office and they start talking to the VP versus how do they actually, their real persona come out.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the receptionist can definitely be a screener, whether for candidates, whatever service that you're providing or selling. So interesting. Thank you.
What's really most important, whether you need, like what you were saying, Al, with the receptionist for the GSA and the contractors, or with financial, or if you don't, is what we call legibility of space. The person needs to know when they walk in, that comfort level, they need that welcoming feeling, as far as they know either this is the kiosk, this how it works and it's clearly communicated, or you have the live person that's there to greet you. That's a great idea as far as what we call like the refreshment area, especially in where we live, Southern California. It's called a decompression zone. We're usually, trying to get there. We've hit traffic. You just want a moment to just kind of decompress, and there's no better place than if you have something at bar height. You don't necessarily need to sit down, but you can grab a glass of water. You can say, oh, here's the person I need to check in. And it also connects back to facilities being a return on investment, because it's going to be your first impression. So if you are back to the job seeker, that's the first time they're coming into the facility, that's their first impression. So actually that's an area that's getting a lot more look from the C-suite than ever before, regardless of if it's going to be a person or automation. So just some thought starters there. Another one is technology. We have so much technology. So how do you balance the technology also between the 4 generations? But you have virtual reality, you have WebEx training. But you also need that connection of the energy of the physical. So even with training, there's been studies that if you just put that whiteboard marker paint on a wall and somebody's able to write while they're talking, that connection and creativity, we all know the energy when people are in a room sharing ideas versus virtual reality. So it's, again, the balance of both. Sometimes we'll go where we've gone all collaboration, all virtual reality, where you really need to make sure that you balance that individual space and the technology of virtual with the interactive, especially the physical. This one I thought you guys might get a kick out of, because in facilities, what's the biggest complaint? I'm too hot, I'm too cold. So there's this new technology that was rolled out in Dubai by MIT, this gesture-based technology. And what this was they had these little robots, these little HVACs that followed people around and monitored their body heat, so you get rid of the central HVAC. So I'm not saying that's going to be something that's going to be here, but what we are seeing, of course, is so much more of that monitoring with Fitbits. One of the big trends, I don't know if you guys saw it on the news, but it was just July 24th of this year. 3 Square Market, did you guys hear about that? The chip that they are going to put right here in between the thumb and the forefinger, the index finger. And I find it very concerning. They seem to be on board with it. It's in Wisconsin. And what this will do is, if you need to open up the building, if you're going to make purchases out of a vending machine, if you're going to reserve a conference room. So, and they said, oh, you can put it in and remove it. So it's kind of interesting, but that's the latest trend in technology that was just recently. Yes, like right here. Then one of the other individuals, one of the gals goes, no, I'll do it as far as a bracelet, and then it's just interesting, the controversy on that. But again, there's going to be so much technology that we're going to have to adopt to. One thing we are in agreement, 75% of all adults, of all generations, admit and believe that technology is extremely way too distracting. Millennials in particular, there was a study that when they receive a text, they check that text within 90 seconds of receiving the text. That's how fast they're on it. Very distracting. Back to your question about how are people not engaged? Every 90 seconds. And as far as bandwidth, This is based off the internet. Every minute we've got 50 billion messages, 41,000 photos, and 120 hours of video hitting us. That's huge. And so is there effect on all of us in the facilities and engagement? You bet. 2000, 13 seconds was our attention span. In 2015, it's 5 seconds. So it's 2017. Are you guys still paying attention? Is everybody gone? But that is such a huge drop, huge drop. So how do we balance that in our engagement and within our facility? I thought this was kind of cool. The human brain, it can process images, pictures, 60,000 times faster than words. So maybe what we should do instead of so much signage, do an image, like for instance, instead of coffee bar or break room, just have a huge photo of a coffee mug. That way people can just intuitively know within the space where to go versus all the signage. So there's been studies on the images. BYOD, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, that by the end of 2017, bring your own device, your own phone. A lot of the workforce that's entering into the organizations today prefer to bring their laptop, the Apple, whatever they're used to using. So this is a trend that you're going to start seeing organizations not providing the devices that they have in the past. This next one on economics, I was blown away by some of these statistics, so we'll see what you guys think. 40% of the workforce today has a net worth of 0. 40%. I was like, that can't be right. But this was this was Forbes. And they also, Money Matters interviewed 2,000 millennials, and 41% of the 2,000 millennials that they interviewed admitted that they spend more on Starbucks a year than they put into their 401k. So again, this is a trend back to you're not going to hire the best talent based on salary and compensation because, again, it's so much more about their lifestyle. And this was another one. 40% of the gross domestic product in businesses today did not exist 10 years ago. Think about it. Fitbit, Uber, there's quite a bit. So you are planning facilities with products that didn't exist 10 years ago, and that's going to bring up our third question.
Okay, it looks like a two-part question. We'll start with the first one. How do organizations and people continue to be adaptable with the fastest rate of change in history? So what are you doing to be adaptable in your organizations from the facility perspective? Or what have you seen?
Or a better word that was like future-proofing.
Yeah, so that was it. How do you future-proof your organization or your facility? So how do you design or prepare for today when you don't know what's coming down the road?
Our new furniture standard is sit-stand desks for everybody. They're much smaller, but more conference rooms, collaboration rooms, varied workspaces, and totally adjustable ergonomic chairs. So theoretically, anybody could sit at any station.
Okay, so developing furniture and workspace standards that can flex and change. Anyone else?
We bought a building and are renovating it. It's been 2 years. And we originally put in a brand new HVAC system on the second floor, but everything was still really dark. There's not a lot of natural light. So after 2 years, we put in a completely different HVAC system to monitor individual temperatures instead of this mass area. And then we also put in solitudes because there's no access to natural light. Our estimating team is now together in the staff area, but with the solitudes, what a difference in the workspace. So I think being cognizant that, our building, for example, is restricted from, we're in a heavy industrial area, so there's not a lot of windows, there's not a lot of the light and natural. What do you do to compensate for some of the ways that you enhance productivity normally like the natural light?
So addressing lighting and comfort in the space in advance, not necessarily associated with a particular workstation, but the whole area.
And then the stations too are changing.
I think also two thoughts that come to mind are having workspaces or environments that are easily taken apart and put back together, like thinking Legos, you know, because technology's changing so fast. As soon as you get one computer or phone or system, it's outdated next year, 2 years from now. And so making large investments of money on infrastructure doesn't make a lot of sense when it's going to change in 5 years or less, unless you can keep up. But anyways, second thought is not running away from technology, not being afraid of technology, not looking at it as a negative, but trying to figure out how to leverage that engagement, especially in millennials. There's a lot of creativity in that generation that has been really like people are scared of or have been scared of. And so I think embracing that, figuring out how to leverage that desire for engagement, social interaction, whatever, and using that in a business space or in a working environment. Like, I love that hashtag, love where you work.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that and I just think, that's perfect. I mean, that's just perfect. And it's in a physical space that has a technology basis to it. And so I like that.
Great, so embrace technology and Lego design.
Yeah.
Okay. Like that. What else? Anything else? Tommy, did I see you raise your hand?
Yeah, we do like workplace studies for some of our clients, and there's a financial services firm we're working with, and they have a lot of guys that are a lot older and later on in their careers, most of the partners. And we actually interviewed millennials in the same industry to see what they wanted, to kind of design the space around what their future employees are going to be like. And so we're actually, people that aren't even part of this company, but they're just part of this industry that represent a certain demographic that they want to bring in. We design the space around that, thinking about their needs too.
So truly designing for the future,
Exactly.
not the current.
Right.
That's key. I think I saw a hand over here.
Yeah, a couple things. There's a pretty good YouTube by Simon Sinek. He's kind of a social scientist on millennials. It's really interesting. And I think we found that with 4 generations, you're guessing what somebody's going to like and what somebody's going to like 5 years from now. I'm not even sure they know.
Yeah.
And so my thing is kind of like a Venn diagram to overlay what potential uses you could do with that floor. Drywall's expensive, so are cubes, so is cabling and so forth. And you come up with different ways that you could use it over time versus locking it in and finding out you guessed wrong.
So really designing flexible space, so it's an office today, it could be 6 workstations tomorrow, or a conference room 3 years from now, making that very flexible. And then he mentioned Simon Sinek, you're probably all familiar with him. He has a great YouTube video out there on millennials, and I'm definitely going to watch that. Anybody else?
I would just say just be adaptive. We are in the parking industry, and valet parking is like almost non-existent at night now because everyone Ubers. So now we've had to completely change, valet, areas to Uber stations and pickups and Lyft stations and pickups. So you just need to be very adaptable because it's changed over the last 2 years. People aren't valeting because they're gonna go get drinks or something and they're taking Uber. So we've had to really rethink parking lots and parking structures. And that's been like the last 2 years, like a complete change in it. So we even have a couple of facilities that clients are building, and they've kind of built their parking structure where in 10, 20 years, if no one's driving to work anymore, that they could actually put storefronts in those. So instead of sloping them, they've made them flat so that they could eventually maybe build that out because they're so expensive. So they're kind of planning for the future that in 20 years, no one's driving. People are getting food delivered. They're not running out, running errands. Like everything can be delivered now. So really that's coming so much faster than we think, especially in the parking, like car industry.
That's really brilliant. She was saying that some of their clients are redesigning designing their parking garages so that they could be made into office space down the road in anticipation of car use reducing, but pretty much adapt or die. I think we've seen a lot of companies adapt really well, and then others that are no longer around anymore.
So on the flip side of that, though, you see a lot of companies using valet parking for the workers,
Yeah,
and
if
maybe
you don't
that's
have
the
enough
interim
parking, yeah.
strategy,
Oh, yeah.
until they commute via Lyft or Uber.
Yeah.
Until they get to
I'm
that
still
point
wrapping my
where
brain around the concept of nobody driving to work anymore.
that could be the biggest thing, though. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Could happen.
I mean, and we already see downtown because if there's an office building and they have, there was a lot less people in the office buildings. Now they're packing them in. There's no parking, so they're charging their employees $300 a month. So if you can Uber for $200, that's like, it's a viable thing. So it's happening right now. Yeah.
Barry, I thought you.
Hi. So, for example, like the
Right.
living in the mall, and there's valet service for all the employees.
Huh.
That they're providing. Pretty fascinating.
Things are changing, for sure.
And the key word there is to be able to repurpose, absolutely. To be able to repurpose and have all different types of support. Again, with useful is the new cool, I'll go through these pretty quick. Again, it's not so much about the cost, but is it something that's going to help me? Is it going to save time? And of course, is it cool? Those are the new products that are really taking off. This was kind of interesting. In 2011, there were 820 co-working facilities. As of today, 20,000 co-working facilities across the United States. Think here in San Diego, we've got WeWork, Co-Create, and what you're seeing is a lot of these younger generations started up entrepreneurials, and they want that space to be able to share costs, to be able to have areas that they don't have investors yet in a place to work. So this is a huge trend that we're seeing within facilities, is co-working. 40% of the workforce in 2020 will be contract labor. So back to that engagement, if you have hired contract labor for say 18 months or 24 months and they're going to be coming in and out of your facility, how are you going to actually engage that contract worker? Are you going to have different spaces for them, touchdown, locker, where are they going to park? I mean, as far as that whole, it's a huge amount too if you think about that, 40% by 2020, different way of working. And then the last one's environmental. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on environmental because we all are very familiar with LEED and well building. The one trend that we're seeing in San Diego, and this is consistent across North America, which I think is great news, organizations are definitely adhering to the guidelines of LEED, adhering to the guidelines of well building. However, they're not always investing the dollars and the cost to get the certification. But they are adhering to the guidelines and doing the right thing. So that part of it, of course, is good news. And building with the planet in mind, a lot of manufacturing, zero waste to landfill. The other thing we're seeing is some co-op, just like what we were seeing with co-working facilities. People are sharing supplies, tools. What we're seeing in residential, in certain neighborhoods, there's one lawnmower for 10 houses to share instead of 10 lawnmowers for 10 homes. So you're really starting to see what they call co-op products in regards to environment. And of course, remove harmful chemicals, as we know, in facilities. So we hope that we achieved the goals. And of course, the last one, to be able to apply these trends to creating spaces. I had to put in this one slide on TikTok, welcome Gen Z to the workforce, because Gen Zs are those since 1997. There's going to be our 20-year-olds entering the workforce today. Extremely entrepreneurial. But I love this quote from the Gen Z Effect book that said, generational thinking is like the Tower of Babel or Babel. It's pronounced both ways. I think it's funny they use that as a reference. It only serves to divide us, so why not focus on the behaviors that unite us, especially in facilities. So with that, I don't know if there's any other questions, but that's just kind of a quick overview on trends in facilities today. So thank you.
Any questions for Sue Ann or any further discussion?
Great. Thanks.
When I look at all of this and how much we're catering to these new generations, like just to play devil's advocate, sometimes I think, like, are we becoming more soft or too soft or catering too much to people? And, you know, I have a lot of friends who manage employees who are between the 18 and 25 years of age, and they just constantly complain that the work ethic is down, that the quality of work and accountability is not what it was 10 years ago. And I know you can get into many discussions about that, but do you guys talk about that? Do you think that we are getting too soft and that we aren't building people up the way that they were with the same work ethic, and that everything is so fluffy and wonderful in the workplace, and where it's like we're here for work?
Well, I think what is happening is we talk about the rate of change, is that the work life and the home life have blended so much that where's that balance? When we had that formal schedule of 9 to 5, it was very easy to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
So you don't have that, and you have the different generations, and you have the technology on top of that. So it's really a recipe of ingredients. I don't think it's just generational or just technology, but it's a combination of all of this change hitting at the same time. So I thought that was really interesting when they did what we call the STEEP framework, because it is social, technology, environmental, and we know political too, and again, we're not talking politics, but all of that has created where we're at today. So I think it's really hard to just say that we're catering to one generation when there's so many other, contributors.
But it does get talked about a lot.
It gets talked about a whole lot, but what they're starting to look at now, instead of just talking about that, is looking at the life phases of where people are. Because again, if you have a single mom that's 40 that has to pick her kid up from school, and a 25-year-old single mom that has to pick her kid up from school, you're going to have so much more lifestyle and values than you would generation, really. They might work different technology, but like Lisa, she's probably one of the most techie people I know. I mean, seriously. So it's really interesting how I wasn't saying that. We're the same age. We're the same age. So the change part of it, take my foot out of my mouth.
Any other comments or questions for Sue Ann? Super interesting topic, so thank you again.
Really good.